represent the 7th Congressional District. Thank you for letting me do that for you. I'm proud to be your voice in Congress. And you are my second in-person town hall since COVID. So it is so great to be back. Our first one was last night on Vashon Island. You know, I tell people I represent 6 cities in the country of Vashon. So we went over to Vashon yesterday and we had an amazing day. We got to see some salmon conservation projects. We got to visit with the Latino organization there. We got to go to one of the last remaining Japanese-American homesteads that's out on Vashon, the Mukai Gardens, which was amazing, and then we did a town hall out there. And today we are here with you, and so I just want to say thank you so much for showing up today and being here to listen and for me to listen to you and for you to be able to ask me anything you want. That's really what most of the town hall is. Let me ask you, how many people have never been to a town hall with a congressional member? Oh, stand up, stand up. All of you have never been to one, stand up, and let's give them a round of applause. I love that so much. This is the heart of democracy. This is where I get to listen to you and you get to tell me what you're thinking about and what you are concerned about, and we get to have a discussion. Before we get started, I wanted you to know that as your member of Congress, a lot of what we do and put emphasis on is constituent services. So I don't know if any of you have used our office before, but we have an incredible team of people, both here and in DC, who are working to help you navigate the federal agencies, to get you, your benefits that you're due, but you haven't been able to get them, to get you passports, to deal with immigration issues. We have returned over $5 million to constituents just by doing this work. And so I wanted to take a minute, I don't have my whole staff team here, but if all of our staff from the DC and district offices that are here would just stand and wave so that we can recognize staff member who is visiting us for the first time tonight from DC, who staffs me on the Education and Labor Committee, and guess what? Tonight is his birthday. And so here's what we're going to do. I'm going to say 1, 2, 3, and we're going to say happy birthday, Mike. Okay, you ready? 1, 2, 3.
Happy birthday, Mike!
So we have a lot to talk about tonight. Just today, and just for those of you who have never been to a town hall, how this is going to work is I'll talk for maybe 12 to 15 minutes, and then we'll just open it up for your questions. And there will be mics here, and each of you, we're asking you to try to keep it to a minute, and your questions or your comments, and we'll try to get through as many people as we can. But that's really the majority of the town hall is listening to you and talking about what you want to talk about. But I did want to say that today I had an amazing press conference to unveil my climate resilience workforce bill. And we did it in Burien, in Boulevard Park. And this is a bill that I've been working on for a year with local and national partners that is truly an intersectional approach to taking on climate resilience. And it does really 2 main things. One, it establishes an office of climate resilience within the White House. For the first time, when I started working on this a year ago, I had no idea that the federal government does no coordinated planning for climate resilience. None at all. And that the states and localities that do that are doing it completely on their own dime or their own initiative. And so this, for the first time, would establish a centralized, coordinated approach to climate resilience planning, would have resources and grants to push down to localities to be able to do their own planning and to have frontline communities at the table, and also would invest in a climate resilience workforce. Because that workforce today happens all the time. There's a natural disaster, and you find often undocumented immigrants, formerly incarcerated people, doing the work of rebuilding the communities, but they're not getting paid, they're not getting benefits, they don't always have the training they need, even though they're doing an incredible job. And so for the first time, this says, let's invest in a real climate resilience workforce. with good union jobs that help us to rebuild our communities and actually build a more cleaner, greener community. So there's a fabulous article that just came out in the Seattle Times today, and I hope you read about it and help me to get this bill passed. We're super excited about it. All right, so first thing I want to talk about is Ukraine, and you'll see I'm wearing a butterfly pin with the Ukrainian colors to show my solidarity for Ukraine. This pin, by the way, was made by the Refugee Artisan Initiative, which is up in Lake City Way, and so if you want to support their work, amazing refugees from all over the world who are really contributing their skills in these creative ways, and they made and gifted me this. It's been devastating, and I met today with the director of the Ukrainian Community Center, and he shared with me some of what he and his community are going through. This is an illegal, unjustified, unprovoked, outrageous war that Russia has waged on Ukraine. And the consequences of it are on television every day, are in the newspapers every day. We're seeing it unfold under our very eyes. 3 million already, at least 3 million refugees that have fled Ukraine. And I think you all know I'm the elected chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus. We have 98 members of the Congressional Progressive Caucus. And we have really been focusing on the role that the United States should play is around diplomacy and de-escalation and helping to get to a negotiated settlement. We do not need another endless war, and we certainly don't need a war between two nuclear powers to break out. So I know that this is a really difficult time, and honestly, there aren't any good choices on the table for us. I am really proud that the President Biden, has really focused on those exact things, on building and rebuilding our relationships with NATO and with our European allies, which were destroyed by the previous administration. And that is why you have seen such concerted action together by the NATO allies. And that has in turn allowed us to really make Russia the pariah that it should be for waging this aggression on Ukraine. Had we gone it alone, had we tried an America First policy as the previous administration was pushing, we would be in a very different situation today. And I hope nobody ever forgets that the previous president is still calling Vladimir Putin a wonderful human being, is the person that actually withheld congressionally approved aid to Ukraine because he wanted President Zelensky to do him a favor and investigate Joe Biden's son and Burisma. So the situation that we're in, if anybody doubts that it matters who is in the White House, certainly here you have that right in front of you. So that said, what we've been focused on, and what the Biden administration has been focused on, is first of all rebuilding our relationships with our diplomatic allies, making sure that we are moving as a concerted whole together. Secondly, getting the military and humanitarian assistance to Ukraine that we need to get to Ukraine. And that is why we just passed legislation that appropriated another $14 billion to Ukraine for that humanitarian and military assistance. And then third, really trying to work on the sanctions as targeted as possible to Russian oligarchs, to crippling the Russian economy, to the banks, the Russian banks, so that we can control the flows of dollars. And essentially the goal of sanctions, the way I think about it, is that the goal of sanctions is to make the cost and the consequence of Russia's aggression dire enough that Russia could then move to an off-ramp, a negotiated settlement, and a diplomatic solution rather than continued military action. Do we know if that's going to work? No, we don't know. And I have deep concerns about this. I go to bed at night thinking about it. I wake up in the morning thinking about it. I'm sure you all are in a similar place. And so we're just going to have to continue to try to get as much assistance as we can to Ukraine, to be in solidarity. I've now been on 2 calls with President Zelensky, with other members of Congress, and I can't tell you how incredibly courageous he is and his leadership is, and the Ukrainian people are. The women who are standing in front of tanks in Ukraine and refusing to move until those tanks turn away, and putting their own lives there, and the millions of lives, of course, that have already been, or the hundreds of thousands of lives that have either been displaced or lost. So this is a really difficult time for the world, and I think there's a lot in question in terms of what exactly the outcome will be. The other thing we've been pushing for is for the resettlement of Ukrainian refugees. So the Biden administration, with our urging and support, has announced temporary protected status for Ukrainian Americans who are living in the United States so that they don't have to be returned to Ukraine. But in addition, today, President Biden announced that there will be 100,000 refugees, Ukrainian refugees, that the United States will accept. We still need to figure out exactly what that means and how we expedite the processing. And then, of course, I know with this community here in Seattle that has been so welcoming to refugees, whether from Ukraine or Haiti or Honduras or wherever it is, Africa, Washington State and Seattle has always been welcoming. And I know that you will again as we welcome Ukrainians into our city as they wait out this war. So thank you so much for that. Now, in addition, I just want to say something about energy independence. I had dinner last week with the EU ambassador and with some of the ambassadors from European Union countries. And I'll tell you that nobody in Europe is talking about this as a moment to reinvest in more drilling. Nobody.
Really?
Nobody is talking about it that way. Only in the United States do we hear that conversation come up. The reality is that these oil companies ratcheted down supply during COVID. The price actually dropped of oil, but you didn't see the gas prices at the pump go down. You didn't see that. And now, these same oil companies that are asking for more drilling have actually not ratcheted up their supply yet. They still haven't ratcheted up what they ratcheted down during COVID because it's very profitable for them to keep the price high. And so what we have now introduced, a number of different bills, and the Progressive Caucus has been leading on this, to stop the profiteering of oil companies right now. And so our thought is to put a tax on excess profits and then to distribute that back to consumers, because we know that people are having a hard time with the increased prices. And that has been a real challenge for people. But there is a way that we can stop oil companies from profiteering. And also, there are two committees in Congress that will be calling these CEOs of oil companies in for hearings. And so we'll get to question them about that as well. So we will do everything we can to stand in solidarity with Ukraine and deeply appreciate your support and your love for our Ukrainian brothers and sisters and siblings, and of course the diaspora that is here and around the country. In terms of Congress, just a couple things to highlight. We have also been fighting for our domestic priorities here at home, and we just passed a $1.5 trillion omnibus package, which is essentially the funding for all of our federal agencies. So if you think about anything that the federal government works, this is the budget that funds all of that work. And in it, we have secured significant increases for domestic spending. So $17.5 billion for high poverty K-12 schools, increased funding for Head Start to $11 billion, also increases to NIH, CDC funding, $83 million specifically for safe motherhood and infant health, as well as mental health resources for kids. And also, very importantly, the omnibus finally reauthorizes the Violence Against Women Act, and within that, a bill that I co-authored with Senator Patty Murray, which is the Survivors' Access to Supportive Care Services. And that is for survivors of sexual assault and sexual violence. So we're excited that that bill has been passed and signed into law. And although we might be on the other side of COVID, I think we know that the pandemic isn't over, and we're still fighting for more public health money to up our supplies again of therapeutics and tests, because we know that there are all these other variants that are still coming through. In addition, this year, for the first time, we were able to bring back what we're calling community-based project funding. Some of you may know that as what used to be called earmarks, but we don't call it earmarks anymore. We call it community-based funding. And I was able to bring back $4 million, $4.1 million, to the district, and it's fabulous programs, everything from $700,000 for the United Indians of All Tribes Foundation, a Northwest Native Canoe Center at Lake Union. We went to visit Path with Art today. We have money for them, for their programs, for folks who are experiencing homelessness to be involved in the arts. We have a neighborhood house employment program, City of Burien Youth Services program, a whole bunch of really fabulous, some housing, really wonderful housing projects to expand affordable housing, and we'll go through that process again this year, and we'll have another opportunity to fund programs in the 7th District every year, which is going to be really fantastic. Now, I serve in the People's House. We get things done in the People's House of Representatives. We are close to the people. We know what needs to be done. And so I am going to tell you a list of all the things that we have passed, not all the things, just a few of the things that we've passed in the People's House. The PRO Act and $15 minimum wage, both of which I'm a lead sponsor of. The For the People and the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. The Equality Act. The Equality Act, particularly now to protect, and I'm a proud mother of a trans kid, to protect our trans folks across the country, the Dream and Promise, the No Ban and the Access to Counsel Acts, paycheck fairness, gun safety legislation, climate legislation. There is a lot more. But guess what?
Senate.
The Senate. We've got a problem in the Senate, which is why we have advocated as the Progressive Caucus for the elimination or the reform of the filibuster. So this thing is a Jim Crow relic.
Yeah.
It has been used for a long time to prevent movement forward on critical civil rights legislation, including legislation that is endorsed by Republicans, Democrats, and Independents. But we have a situation in the Senate now where 40 senators who represent a very small minority of the people of the United States can block any piece of legislation, not from even being voted on, but I'm talking about even being debated. You can't even bring a bill to the floor to be debated because of the filibuster, and that is just wrong. So we didn't get there this year, but I will tell you that at this time last year, there were a lot more than 2 senators who didn't want to reform the filibuster. A lot more. So we have made enormous progress, and if we can just widen our margins in the Senate a little bit in this next election, we can get the filibuster reformed and we can pass these critical voting rights bills and civil rights bills for once and for all. So those of you that know, have watched the CPC, you know that I was pretty busy last year fighting to get Build Back Better through and fighting to leave nobody behind. And Build Back Better, of course, was 85% of the president's agenda, and unfortunately it got split up. The president's agenda got split into 2 bills, the Bipartisan Infrastructure Bill and the Build Back Better Act. And because of the courage and the strength of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, and because we refused to leave anybody behind, we were able to pass both bills through the House. We were able to get a negotiated agreement between all 50 senators and the president to fund universal pre-K, universal child care, where no one pays more than 7% of their income on child care. Elder care, making sure we put $500 billion into climate change and taking on climate change. $150 billion investment into housing. That would be the biggest federal investment into housing that we've ever had. Taking on the price of prescription drugs, healthcare, and so much more. And that, unfortunately, we did our part. We even got a commitment from all 50 senators, but I don't know what to say when one of those senators goes back on that commitment to his own president of his own party. All I can say is we are not giving up. We are going to get done whatever we can get done in legislation, and I still believe that we can do some of that. We won't be able to do all of it, but that we can do some of that. And then once we get bigger majorities in the Senate, hopefully we can get the rest of it done. So we're working very hard to push for legislation and get whatever we can get done. But we've just unveiled a slate of executive actions the Progressive Caucus has, with a whole host of 55 things that the president can do right now. And we've talked with the White House about this, and in fact, they've already taken one of them and moved it forward around SEC transparency for corporations and how much they contribute. That's a really good move. But also, we want a cancellation of some amount of student loan debt. We want to make sure we get that done. We also think that there are ways to improve healthcare, to use margin rights, to lower the cost of prescription drugs, and a whole host of other things. So you'll be watching that unfold over the next several weeks and months. And then I call it progressive bar setting. You know, people ask me what it means to be a progressive, and I say it just means you're the first to the best and most just idea. And then everyone else has to catch up, and we built the movement, right? Like when we passed $15 minimum wage, became the first major city in the country to do that. And then it took, 10 years for the rest of the country to start to catch up with us. But we have to do that because there is a vision that we are putting forward about the world we want to create. And I don't think it's too much for us to constantly have that vision in front of us. And that's why I've introduced bills like Medicare for All, like College for All, like Housing is a Human Right Act. The Ultra Millionaires Tax Act with Elizabeth Warren, where, yeah, that's right, listen, your first $50 million is free and clear. Okay, so you already rest easy. You don't have to pay a cent of a wealth tax on your first $50 million. Nobody's leaving, right? You just pay 2 cents on every dollar after that $50 million, and you get up to $1 billion, and you pay 3 cents. That's all we're asking. $1 billion, you pay 3 cents on every dollar. And guess how much that brings in? $3 trillion over 10 years. And guess how much of the population pays that? 0.001 of 1%.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
A tiny group of people. That's where the wealth has accumulated. So listen, we're fine if you want to be a millionaire. You can have 50 million, it's okay. But let's share some of it so that we can invest in the rest of the country. So let me end with this. Elections make a difference. Who's in power makes a difference. And even with the slimmest majorities, I don't want anybody to question that it has made a difference to have the House in power of Democrats, the Senate in power of Democrats, and the White House controlled by a Democrat. It matters. And so here's my 30-second spiel for what we've gotten done in just 1 year. You ready? All right, here we go, because you're all going to have to repeat this after. So, in just 1 year, we have cut hunger by 32%.
Great.
We have cut child poverty by 40%. We have created 6.5 million new jobs. We have brought unemployment down to the lowest level in 50 years, half a century, the lowest unemployment levels. We have vaccinated 70% of the American public. We have put money in people's pockets with survival checks and so many other programs that we've put forward, and we've helped people get through this terrible, terrible crisis we've been in. And I know that we have gone from crisis to hardship, but it's still hardship for a lot of people. But that's all been done in just 1 year. So imagine what could happen if we get a slightly bigger majority and if we are able to complete the rest of the agenda that we have before us. That is what I am totally committed to doing, and I want to thank you for being here tonight, and I can't wait to take your questions, your comments, anything else you want to share. Thank you.
That was so important and valuable to hear directly those updates. And I know I appreciate your grassroots and community-based work. And so, as you mentioned, the rest of the program is really about hearing from all of you. So a couple ground rules, or housekeeping, if you will. There are 2 microphones on either side of the stage. The staff members will be holding them for you. You can line up to ask your questions. There's a 1-minute limit that we ask you all to stay to, and it'll help you They'll help you know when you're at your limit, just so we can get through as many questions as possible. So please come on up, and they'll have the microphones ready for you and wipe them off between people. So thank you.
All right, let's start with you, Mario. Oh yeah, feel free to line up on either side, because we'll go back and forth between the lines.
30 seconds.
My name is Antonio Rufin. Between 2014 and 2018, I had the privilege to travel yearly to Kyiv, Ukraine for the Boeing company to provide technical training to young Ukrainian engineers at the company's Kyiv Design Center. Over 5 trips, I probably taught close to 200 engineers. This photo is my class of 2016. I don't know if these young men and women and their families are alive and well, but I do know that many of them have been helping defend their city and their country from Russia's criminal invasion, which now at 1 month continues unabated. I am heartbroken. This Vyshivanka, Ukrainian shirt I'm wearing, was a gift from my first graduating class. Representative Jayapal, I'm very grateful for the actions the White House and the Congress have undertaken and for your continued efforts to bring this horrific crime to an end. The reality, however, is that only continued ratcheted pressure on the Russian leadership has a chance to achieve that. There's a number of actions I've written to you about. The humanitarian needs are also just absolutely daunting. I would ask you to please consider expediting the arrival of Ukrainian refugees into this country who have now, as you mentioned, TPS status.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, and thank you for that work and for that beautiful photograph that you shared. I am actually looking into that right now. So it's TPS for Ukrainians who are here, but the expedited work that we need to do is to bring people here. That, you know, Canada has an expedited 2-year non-immigrant visa, something like that, if that was possible. So we're working with the Biden administration to figure out what's possible. I'm on the immigration subcommittee, and it's a top priority for me. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'm from Hawaii, but I work in Hawaii and in Seattle. Many years ago, Sparky Matsunaga, who was a senator, proposed a Department of Peace in Congress. And the result of his work is at the University of Hawaii, there's a Peace Institute. I taught at Stanford after I worked in Vietnam during the Vietnam War. And there used to be something called Beyond War. I just Googled it. And it has become something else. I'm leading up to a point in a request for you. Conflict management, resolution, negotiation, mediation, those kinds of skills. Can we have more emphasis on that, on those skill sets? And then there's something called this global nonviolent communication, which is about feelings, expressing distinctions of feelings. I've been looking at those as a way to bring more conversations and more movement toward a peaceful orientation to life.
Yes.
So is it possible to put a big light on peace?
Thank you so much. What a beautiful question, and thank you for your work on this. You may know that I have been, for 20 years now, going back to 2002, part of the anti-war movement, much of which was up here in the Phinney neighborhood, actually, back after the Iraq War. And it is my belief that we spend way too much on military spending. It's why I don't vote for the military budget, because $750 billion for military spending is too much. But more than that, what you're talking about is the skills and the training that we need to really achieve the kind of peace that we see. So I'm also I work with the nonviolent community, so there are a number of organizations, Win Without War and others, that are focused on that kind of training, and I think it needs to be taught in our schools, honestly. I mean, I think that's the work we need to do from the ground up. We are working in Congress to change the way we think about where power comes from, and that is why I introduced, with Barbara Lee and others, a foreign policy resolution for the 21st century. And I hope you take a look at it, because it is really about the values and the tactics that we should use in order to create a peaceful world. So I hope we're moving in the direction that you're talking about, and I hope that your work and other educators like you that are helping our young people and our adults to think about different ways to move forward is so incredibly valuable. Thank you so much.
If I can say one more thing, I just want to make the request that it become a national conversation.
Yeah.
That we talk about it, that I want to see it in the newspapers.
Well, take a look at my resolution, and it's a beginning. It's not everything, but it's a beginning, because that's exactly what we're trying to do, is change that conversation. Thank you so much.